Welcome to Central Georgia Focus, the Ask Mayor Miller edition. I'm your host, Liz Fabian from the Center for Collaborative Journalism. Each month, we sit down with Macon-Bibb County Mayor Lester Miller and ask your questions and questions from the journalists at the center. Thank you again for joining us, Mr. Mayor. First of all, let's start off. I know we had 2 homicides over the past weekend. One about 3 a.m. on Woodward Avenue in Unionville, another one downtown at Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, at about Poplar Street, about 4 a.m. Sunday morning, actually. What can you tell us that you've learned about those cases?
Well, we can talk about those cases specifically, but the good news is it had been 30 days without any homicide in Macon-Bibb County, and that's something always to celebrate when you go that stretch of time, especially coming out of the summer months. So we're encouraged by that. These 2 particular ones, especially late night again, you know, if you're at a bootleg house at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and you get into an altercation after getting intoxicated, you may get shot, right? So it's one of those things where the average person sitting at home doing what they're supposed to do and has nothing to worry about at all. The one downtown is a little bothering. It happened about 3:45 in the morning. Actually, on Sunday after church, I convened a special meeting in my office at City Hall, along with the sheriff and the DA, Newtown Macon, code enforcement, a couple of business owners down there, county attorney, and we had a meeting and we discussed some things that's going to happen. You'll hear about some of that today, and we have to be bold and take aggressive steps to make sure that we take care of the issues we're supposed to. The special permits we did already have made a great impact. This is just something that has to be tightened up on the other end, and it's going to involve some police presence and some changing of some ordinances. You know, look forward to some new things coming down the pipe in the very near future, some changes to some ordinance where we'll have a hard, fast closure downtown. At a certain time, no questions asked, and there'd be nobody on the sidewalks walking around late at night.
So when we have a homicide like that, I guess you get some sort of briefing. How does that work?
Well, typically it really depends on, sometimes I'll talk to the sheriff, sometimes I'll talk to Leon Jones. Certainly they're all important, and we want to find out what happened, what could have been done differently. So in this particular case, I felt like it's a need to you know, get right on it. I was in church, and basically as soon as church was over, we called this meeting. Had about 20 people there, had very good conversations. We wanted to be as inclusive as possible with people downtown and people who make the decisions. We'll be meeting with the commissioners on September the 5th for some of this, but today you'll hear, I expect you to hear from the sheriff involved in a couple of those situations. So we'll just, you know, play it by ear. We have a couple of weeks now to kind of work on this and bring it before the commission on September the 5th for a vote.
Were any of those news cameras up and running at that time?
Certainly we have cameras, and I think we're going to ID the shooter pretty quickly, if not already. So it's very, you know, money well spent, and it shows the problems that we've had in that particular area that have to be addressed immediately, and it also shows the people involved in the shooting. So it's one of those things where people get into a scuffle, a fight, they're drinking alcohol. You know, maybe you don't get the best end of the stick and you pull out a gun and shoot somebody. Very unfortunate. But, you know, bottom line, at 3:45, you need to be at home in bed and not out, you know, on the side of the road.
And recently, your administration, the county commission, made changes to the special event permits for downtown. Can you tell us some of the things that were happening that brought about that change in the law?
Well, one of the most important things is when you have a special event permit, it needs to be a special event, not just something that's another party, another night. But more importantly, when you have a venue that's set up for that and have the alcohol permit, then you've got some strings attached to that the county can regulate, but more importantly, you've got the cameras there. You always need to have cameras there so you can capture what happened. It covers the point of sale for underage drinking, but also in the event that you have an incident, you need to be able to catch the person that did this. And those special event permits didn't require cameras to be there at these places because they were just regular businesses who called themselves special event businesses. So we had about 280, I think, last year. Since we've done the special event permit, we only had 1 come in the last 3 weeks. So normally we would have about 20 to 24 come in. So I think people got the message. A couple of downtown bars have now got their bar license. We're happy to report at least 2 of those that were on those special event permits on an every night basis. Now went through the full process, fingerprint, and they've got their licenses, so we're ready to make sure they do business properly.
Pleasant Hill property owner Damon Wood was saying that he hears gunfire and high-speed chases through Pleasant Hill, and the new bike lanes that were just installed in the spring have already been torn up, and he says his property values doubled there too. So what measures have you taken or do you plan to take to make that neighborhood safer as well?
Well, the neighborhood is already safer. You can see that the crime has dropped in that area. The shot spotter tells us that the shots have actually decreased. One is too many, right? If you're at home and hear that. Sometimes you don't know where they're at. It couldn't be Pleasant Hill, maybe somewhere else, depending on whether it's day or night. So ShotSpotter's done a great job of doing that. Resources will be allocated in that area they already have, but we've seen a drastic decrease in crime in that area. Certainly homicides are down in multiple areas of Macon-Bibb County, but ShotSpotter certainly has played a large part in that, and new police presence in that area as well. So the bike lanes are one of those things. Right in that particular area, you've got a lot of interstate stuff going on there. So, it's nice to have the bike lanes there. They'll be ready to go as soon as this interstate part is completed right there. As soon as some of the demolition that you've got in that area there, and some construction that we have, and some renovations coming on. So it's one of those things. It's just a work in progress, and I think things are going to continue to get better in that area. It just takes a little time.
Now, that Shot House homicide, that was in Unionville, but on the other side of Mercer University, from kind of like Montpelier. Recently, the county commission and your administration denied the alcohol license for the M&M grocery store there that had been declared a public nuisance, shut down temporarily last year. The judge allowed them to reopen. What's your rationale for denying that license in that location? They have signs up now, no loitering, surveillance cameras. What can they do to get back in the good graces, or can they?
Well, I think the place needs to be torn down, honestly. I think it's an attractive nuisance. They've abandoned that site for quite a while. Interesting enough, for the last 10 days, that business has been closed. Not even staying open to 8 o'clock that the judge allowed them to do. There's been no activity there at all. They've been closed. We hadn't had any problems there. So I think the evidence is overwhelming that that place was not operating properly, attracted certain folks there, and they did nothing to protect the people in that community. So we look forward to having a final hearing on that. We're hoping that the judge will close it down permanently. And right now they can't sell alcohol at that place. And because they have lost their license, subject to any appeals they may have, they're not going to be able to sell alcohol at that location for quite some time.
And when we come back, we're going to be talking, the mayor and the county commission have made changes when it comes to alcohol licensing at convenience stores, and we'll discuss that when we come back, so stay tuned. Thank you for staying with us for the Ask Mayor Miller edition of Central Georgia Focus. We talked a little bit in the last block about the M&M grocery shutting down, but it seems like every county commission meeting there's another convenience store looking for a license. And can you kind of clarify what the difference is between a Vice Mart and a gas station and a food mart, and how that affects the alcohol licensing?
Well, first of all, the reason you see it every meeting because it's become viable, very important to the operation of Macon-Bibb County and the crime. We have looked at the Vice Marts, we looked at the stores, and a lot of times this is the area that people congregate that commit a lot of the crimes and eat up a lot of resources in Macon-Bibb County. So we started making sure that we make sure they dot every I, cross every T. And right now the convenience centers or convenience stores, they want to call them market fresh, grocery stores, some of these are just sham. They put a name on there and make you think they got fresh fruits and vegetables and meats, and they don't have it. So we started putting a little bit more bite to it, make sure that they have the fresh meats that they want to. They got to be certain amount of fruits there and vegetables there to make sure if you're going to say that you're going to advertise as a store, you're going to be one of those stores. At the same time, Vice Marts are your cigarettes, your beer, things like that. A lot of late night gambling in there, we know of that. So, and a lot of people, when you see a lot of money coming through there, it creates some kind of opportunities for theft and crime and robberies. So we went to closing a lot of these places down at 11 o'clock. We have seen the rates drop substantially in those areas. Certainly those types of stores at those late night hours are having less trouble now because they're closed from 11 to 7. If you serve gasoline, you can stay open a lot longer, 24 hours. So at the same time, we've got this good standing letter. We don't want people to doing business with Macon-Bibb County that can't pay their taxes. And you've seen several recently that have been denied because they haven't paid their taxes. So if you owe us, money for tax fees, for property taxes, for ad valorem taxes, you can't get a permit with us, number one, but you also can't have an alcohol license. And sometimes these folks are owed $30,000 and $40,000, we'll deny their license, the next day they'll show up with a check for $30,000 or $40,000. So it is working, and we've been able to collect almost $500,000 since we passed that ordinance, which goes to help all of Macon-Bibb County.
And you can't even have an alcohol license at a store if you're one of those Vice Marts that just has kind of the gambling, the alcohol, and tobacco. You have to have the fresh food.
Right.
And that helps with the food deserts too.
It does.
So people can get their eggs and their milk and some fresh vegetables and
Yeah,
such.
if it's going to be a neighborhood grocery, it's going to be there to serve the people and provide a good quality service for there. They ought to have the stuff that they claim to have there. We'll send our code enforcement there on a regular basis to make sure that they have the right amount of fruits they're supposed to have. If they don't, now that our new ordinance is in place, we can actually revoke their license. And once you revoke the license in some of these places, you can't have that particular store there for a while. So it's certainly an accountability method. It's working so far. We're going to continue to do that. At the same time, we want to be fair and equitable to everyone. We want to make sure that everyone knows what the law is and that we follow it the way we're supposed to.
Do you think there are too many convenience stores?
Personally, I know that people have businesses. They want to be able to sell and market those the best use for them. I certainly like to see a lot less convenience centers in Macon-Bibb County and gas stations in Macon-Bibb County and a few other things as well. So, they've got some provisions now with P&Z that you can't have one within so many feet of a residential area. Some business owners push back on that, but I actually think it's a pretty good thing. There are going to be some variances that need to happen in certain situations where the neighborhood is left, and certainly we're open to have those in some key spots.
And at the last commission meeting, a woman came in complaining about P&Z and denying her variances and kind of questioned the fact that really the buck kind of stops with P&Z. Do you think that autonomous operation of that, which is unique to Macon-Bibb, do you think that's a good idea? Should that be restructured?
Well, I think that's something that's always been talked about. It's 6 one way, half a dozen the other way. You look at the meat transfer station that's coming up now. There's a question of whether or not Macon-Bibb County is going to be deciding that, or whether or not the planning and zoning is going to, carry the day on that. Been some arguments there that perhaps it should go before a county commission vote, but there's some arguments that planning and zoning is one that's going to handle that. So it's a very unique situation we have in Macon-Bibb County. It works positive sometimes, and sometimes it don't. What you don't want to do is politicize that. You don't want folks to be able to try to get in there and sway the law one way or the other based on the politician that happens to serve in that seat. We do have some accountability. Those people in planning and zoning are appointed by the mayor and commission, so we do have that. It comes up every few years that we can appoint someone. So I think that we have a good process. We have a new director there. He's doing some great work. He's going to be revising a lot of things that are outdated, so I'm looking forward to the changes they're going to bring, and we'll take that as it comes.
And do you think that there should be more focus on kind of like what that neighborhood looks like? Because right now, in certain commercial districts, a convenience store is okay by right. And so, but if you were looking at the property as a whole, like for example, the Macon Mall, should have there been kind of consideration that you've got that beautiful amphitheater coming, and then that Chuck E. Cheese, there's going to be like a car repair shop there where it's not really suited to the atmosphere you're trying to create there, but there was no reason to deny that under the regulations. Should there be more care taken in where businesses are?
Well, I think that's always a consideration, but they have to look at the rules and the laws that they have to work with. Certainly probably not the best use, but I'd be very cautious of calling that a car repair place. It's a very upscale, professionally run place.
It's a
$90,000 to $300,000
yes.
Salaries there. That's nothing to shake a stick at. I can think of a lot worse things that I'd want at the entry play to my amphitheater. Certainly, I think they're going to be a good partner. They've been a good partner everywhere they've been and pay some good salaries. So, we're welcome. And they actually replace a lot on the tax digest there. Had it been my preference, yes, I'd like to have a nice restaurant there overlooking the amphitheater and perhaps a lot more things there. And I think that's going to come around the mall, so I'm not worried about that. But I'd rather be that than a blighted structure, and I think they're going to be a good company and a good partner to work with.
And Chuck E. Cheese was blighted for a long, long time. Are there any construction updates you can give us about the mall? I understand that like the kind of offices are taking a back seat now, that the pickleball's like on the front burner.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think the Board of Elections is open for business and they're ready to go, and I've been over there several times. They've had a couple of meetings over there already. All the furniture has been delivered for the courtroom, so I expect to have a ribbon cutting there in the very near future. The next phase has already begun to work. The new library is starting to come together. I've been over there. Planning and zoning and the business inspection and fees, that's going to be the next phase. The Mayor's Literacy Alliance will be right there as well, making plans to move the Sheriff's Department near the food courts. And then right after that, we'll have the Regional Commission and a special event place that'll happen. So by February the 1st, all those in the first phase should be complete. And then by April, May, you'll have the second phase complete. And then the pickleball will be ready for our first tournament by Thanksgiving this year. And we're very excited about that. And I think we have some other announcements that's coming forward about a couple of new tournaments that you'll have there in the first of the year.
Yeah, because it was my understanding that the pickleball has to be ready sooner because there's something on the horizon. I didn't realize it was already coming up this year, and that's only a couple months away. So
that's right.
That's cool. Now, Catherine Irvine moved here 2 years ago from New York, and she wonders why there's not an expanded transit system and modern buildings in our community. You have any thoughts on that?
Well, certainly I think we have plenty of modern buildings, but I think there's a lot of people in Macon that be willing to fight you to make sure we keep our historical, buildings intact. And we try to kind of balance both of those things. You want to protect what we've had for a long period of time. We're in our 200 bicentennial, celebration, and we want to make sure that we do that. And the architecture is kind of, to that effect. You got some new things coming in Macon that you'll see, some new and innovative things. Museum I can think about with Otis Redding down there, the hotel downtown, some things over on Presidential Parkway that'll be coming in the near future. So I think you'll see some of that variety here, but Macon is Macon, and we're going to continue to do what we believe is best for our community, and it's not just necessarily modernizing everything. As far as the transit is concerned, we all know that the Transit Authority takes care of that. We're looking at expanding some routes there and some times. Cost money, and of course the fuel prices are off the roof these days, and as well as everything else. But we do have some other things we're considering, some micro-transit. I think it's going to open up some possibilities for people in Macon. This is not New York, this is Macon, Georgia, and we're proud of that fact, and I think we certainly got a lot going for us here in our community.
And Robert wanted to know why the old warehouse buildings are still standing on 5th Street down Poplar. He thinks that it looks like the 1930s and should be torn down for more modern buildings, but we do have modern loft buildings down there too, and you can't just tear down somebody's building, right?
People own those properties. If they're not considered a actual nuisance or a blight, of course we don't touch those things, but I'll tell you that each one of those places that he sees has potentials and probably already had contracts on them, and you'll see them getting revitalized in the very near future. Some of those are going to be residential and lost, but as we move closer from the river to where the jail is at right now, perhaps you'll see some more development in that area.
All right, well, stay tuned. When we come back, we'll have more of your questions on Ask Mayor Miller. Thank you for staying with us for the Ask Mayor Miller edition of Central Georgia Focus. Now, Mayor Barry Smallwood was asking about the audit years ago before you even took office. An auditor of the county discovered that possibly the wrong multiplier was used to calculate some pensions, and he was told that he was one of those affected by it. And I know that there has been a spot check of that, but I think the investigation is still going. What can you tell us about how that's going on?
Really, it'd be improper to talk about that right now. Unfortunately, I think that everything will work out for those that have retired. I'm not sure of any multiplier that was messed up. There's probably going to be some adjustments. Unfortunately, sometimes it may adjust upward or downward. So I think there's a small amount of people that are affected by that. The attorneys are working through that process, and in the very near future, the people involved and affected with that will have some final resolution. But it's something we really can't talk about public right now. And you wouldn't want to talk about anything like that for people's personal business, number one. But you don't want to misstate the facts until we know all the issues behind it. We did have an outdated system before, and it's been a challenge to make sure we bring everything forward the way it's supposed to be in today's technology world. So I think we've got all the right people in the right place doing the things that they need to do. In the very near future, we'll have some better response for all those involved.
I know there have been a lot of executive session conversations going on with the different pension boards. And so do you think this is a large percentage of people, or is it more like less than 10%, less than 5%?
Very small
very
percentage.
Few?
Very small percentage. I think that, like I said, unfortunately, when you open up a can of worms, you have to be careful what you ask for, because somebody may want to have their pension looked at and realize they've been getting $40, $50 a pay period, more money than they're supposed to, and guess what? They got to pay that money back. So I think I'd be careful about what I ask for. At the same time, you can't just give people money away from a pension there. But I think it's all going to work out. I feel confident about the things that's going to happen very soon, but it is a process, and we're working through that process now.
How healthy are the county pensions? You know, there's no longer a new pension but you still have retirees that are under the old system. Is it sustainable?
All pensions are in great shape. You know, when I ran for office, there were some people out there saying that we're going bankrupt and these pensions were bankrupt in the county. That's far from the truth. We have a very healthy pension plan for all the ones that we have in place. The county actually funded the pension program the last year or two when actually the actuary shows we didn't even have to fund it. So we want to make sure that we keep it solid, and we're going to continue to do that. And I think it's very healthy, and nothing on the near future is going to cause that to go down.
We have another anonymous question. It was just about having bike lanes in rural areas, in particular along Hartley Bridge, Mount Pleasant, Church Road, Bethel Church, Dixon Road, Fulton Mill, leading to Eisenhower. They just think that the highways would be a lot more safe with bike lanes. But there's a long process involved, particularly if it's a state highway, right?
Right.
It's not something you can just do.
several of those roads are very challenging roads in their own for pedestrian safety and bike safety. I'd be hard pressed to have a bunch of bikes out there right now in the current environment with all the incidents we've had with people getting killed on bicycles and cars. I'm certainly for that, and we're going to develop some areas where we can do that to have connectivity to all parts of Macon-Bibb County in a safe manner. We're just not there yet. Some of those roads, as you mentioned, like Eisenhower, that's Highway 80. GDOT has to be substantially involved in that. And come through Pleasant Hill, we have a grant that we're working on that's going to help improve that, and maybe some things out towards Houston Avenue, South Bibb County area. Certainly you can have some trails and things like that for short distances in that area for people to ride bikes. It's going to involve some better sidewalk and some additional lanes there, so it is an expense, but it's something that could be considered in the next plus.
And Dee Wingo is concerned about the unhoused people under the bridge at Spring Street and all the garbage that's around there. What are the plans?
Well, the plans are to keep doing what we're doing right now, which is making a great impact on people's lives through Brookdale and other resources that we have. I said it before, and I'll say it again, is that those folks are always been there. So if you got concerned about them, please go help. I mean, you can go volunteer at Brookdale, you can go to Salvation Army, you can go to Daybreak. There's many opportunities. You can go down to the church downtown and volunteer your time. We pick up that area multiple times every month. We continue to do that. It's a work in progress, but anywhere you got a major interstate, a downtown that's thriving, and a river, you're going to have those experiencing homelessness, particularly following a pandemic. But right now we have a $550 million project going on that's really disturbed the habitat there. As soon as that portion of the interstate gets taken care of and gets complete, and that is the near future, not the project itself, then you're going to see some substantial changes there. You'll see a lot better cleanliness in that area there, as well as taking care of the less unfortunate there.
Barbara Saffold would like to see the grass cut more and the debris cleared. I actually saw a crew out on Sunday. I think you have some private contractors working, don't you now, to kind of, because this is the growing season, right? So what is being done to keep the right-of-ways cleared?
We'll never have the manicured lawn that everybody wants to. Number one, you don't really pay taxes for it, enough taxes for that. As much as we all know that we pay taxes and contribute, it's not the masters. So we put extra $1 million last couple of years into beautification. Recently, on the table survey that came out, the blight and the beautification were way at the bottom as far as things that need to be done. And 80% of the people in our community were hopeful for our community. So as much as we want to cut the grass every day, we're in Georgia. It rains, sporadically, things grow up. We tried everything we can to do it, but there's 1,100 and something miles of roads to cut in Macon-Bibb County, and a lot of our money goes to public safety and other things. So really, it makes it very difficult to do that. We've increased the funding. We're going to continue to do that and beautify that. It would help if people wouldn't throw trash on the ground and litter, because before we cut those, we have to have a litter crew that goes out there. Otherwise, you've got 10 or 11 times as much trash. So that cuts down the number of times that we cut grass as well, and we have a lot of state roads. And most of the time we get a lot of the complaints, it's not always the county roads, it's a lot of times it's the highways and state roads, which are huge, and the state has a great responsibility as well.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for sharing your time with us again. Remember, this is your program too, so send your questions for next month's episode to mercerccj@gmail.com, and we'll bring you some answers next month. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good day.